So start on number 2 for this, and let's do this first one. This is just like a warm-up, but just a reminder. The number one mistake that we're seeing on all these is really just negatives. So if anything else, write big, write neat. Don't write super small that you can't see a negative or you can't tell the difference. And then also you have to be paying attention so you don't carelessly make a mistake. I've seen some people that'll do like a minus X here, and then they'll do plus over here. So small things is usually when people call me over, ask for help, it's look at their work. It's usually something very small. So you can't be distracted while you're doing these. You'll miss something small, and as you know in Khan Academy, it'll just make you start over. So this is as much as a math assignment as is a concentration, and of course the neatness does count, okay, and of also a lot of patience, okay, because sometimes you don't get it right the first time, you do have to start over. All right, so remember we divided by negative, switch the sign, so it's less than. We have negative over negative, so that's positive, so that's going to be positive 1/3. And negative over negative again is positive 2. So lots of little negatives. You miss just one of them, it changes everything. So just be careful. Okay. So we start at 2, go up 1, right 3. Also go reverse it, go down and left. So it's a straight line. This is a dashed line. So far, so good. And we do the next one right here. So 2x minus y less than 3. So same idea. And you should be able by now to spot if there's a negative in front of the y, you know you're going to end up switching the signs. So tell yourself ahead of time, don't forget to switch the sign. And then when you come to it, you'll be less likely to forget about it. Again, if you're not distracted or anything like that. And if there's no sign number here, you can always use a -1. Divide by negative, divide by negative. So we have y is greater than, switch the sign, 2 over 1x minus 3. And start at -3, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And this one is also a dashed line. There we go. Give you a second for you guys to catch up with all that work. Here we go. Let's do the shading. Everything, let's see here, everything below the red line, so that's all of this. And also everything above the blue line. So that's all of this. And then you can see right here where the shading overlaps. So it should only be shaded in right here. So remember, you have to erase all this. I'm just going to go put it off. Now I know it should be shaded. And this is where it overlaps. So your answer, of course, is where the shading overlaps. Erase down here and erase up here. Don't shade so close to the line that you can't tell it's still a dashed line. Some people get really close to it, and then it starts looking like a solid line because they're overlapping with it. So leave a little bit of space so you can still tell it's a dashed line. Now, that was just a warm-up. There's nothing different about that one. Just a lot of little negatives you got to watch out for. Starting on number 3, you'll look at the equations, and you see they're very similar. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a series of parallel lines. I'll show you what happens when you have parallel lines for your answers. So let's look at number 3. It'll be pretty straightforward. I'm going to subtract x on both sides. So I'm going to have y is less than -x minus 1. Same thing on the bottom one, since it's the same thing on the left. So we're going to have subtract x on both sides, and we'll have -x plus 3. Right? Switch the graph. So we start at -1, and that's down 1, right 1. lines again. And let's do here in red, we do 3, and same thing down 1 over 1. So we got parallel lines. So what happens if you have parallel lines? What is the answer for the shading? All right, so we're going to look to see where the shading overlaps. It's still the same rule. Where does the shading overlap? So they're both less than. So I'm going to shade, let's see here, below the blue line. So everything down here. And then also everything below the red line. So that's all of this. All of this is our answer. So where does it overlap? Just below the blue line. So the answer of the overlapping shading is really just everything below the blue line, which is unusual because before we had like something like this. We had like 4 areas, right? And it would be one of the 4. But with parallel lines, you don't end up with 4 different areas. So it's just a little different. So this part is where it overlaps. That's the only part that should be shaded. So I'm going to change this. There. Oh, yeah. So they're parallel lines, and there are solutions. Now, when we were doing systems of equations, equal signs, the answer is where they intersected, and we'd say, as soon as you have parallel lines, there's no solution because the lines can't intersect. But remember, our answer is not where the lines intersect, it's where the shading intersects. Okay. So let's go down to another one, number 6. Let's go ahead and solve those, both of them. There's a few different types of answers here, so I want to make sure I get to all of them. So show all the work. You got to do it, just go ahead and do it and then check with mine. Not just follow along up here. Keep going. Okay, so we got -1, right? Not by -1, kind of like the number 2 where we started, lots of negatives, so switch that sign. Negative over negative is positive. Negative over negative is positive. We have starting at 1 and going up 1, right 1, over and over. And this one is a solid one. And then do the same thing for the bottom inequality. There we go. Graph x. Yeah. Negative y is greater than negative x plus 3. And once again, divide by -1 everywhere. So we get y is less than x minus 3. Once again, we have parallel lines. This times the dash. Maybe a second to catch up with the work. You should have everything you see up there on your paper right now. Look at this with the shading. So we need to do everything above the red line. And then down here, it's everything below the blue line. So where does the shading overlap? Nowhere. So what's the answer? No solution. So remember, you only keep the shading if it overlaps. So since neither of these overlap with each other, our final answer doesn't have any shading. Right? There's no shading on the very end because it didn't overlap anywhere. So at the very end, we can say no solution. No solution. Shading does not overlap. I'll put that down here. Shading doesn't overlap. Let's do one more on the back. Let's do number 9. Flip it over to the back. This one's already set up for us for the graph, so it'll be a little bit faster. So, start at 3, and we're going to go down 2 and right 1. And we have a solid line because we got a right there. Oh, looks like I missed a. Try that again. Down to right. There we go. And then do the second one as well. Start at -3, down to right 1. And also reverse it, go up to left 1. This one is dashed. So you should have that on your paper. And then look at the shading for this. Where does, if anywhere, does the shading overlap? Okay. So it's everything below the red line. Right? Everything below the red line. And then everything above the blue line. So you can see that the shading does overlap in between the two parallel lines. So your final answer will be everything between the two lines. So you can see it's not as easy to pick out a no solution as before. You really have to do all the same steps. There's no shortcut here. Because parallel lines could be shaded between, so there's an answer here, but the parallel lines could be shaded like on number 6. We shaded up and we shaded down, so the shading never overlapped, so there's no answer at all. And then we can have parallel lines where the shading is just below or above one of them. So 3 different parallel lines and with 3 different types of answers. You still have to do the same step. If it's parallel lines, don't take any shortcuts. Don't automatically say no solution. Okay? There's 3 possibilities. Between them, no answer at all, or above or below one of them. Okay? So finish that up, and once you're done with that, I'll check your answers, and then you can continue on Khan Academy. Tomorrow we'll be doing a review for the test. Thursday, do a little bit more review. Friday, we'll be taking the test on all this. So if you have any homeworks that are not done, you want to get those done and turned in before Friday. Okay? Because you can't turn in the homeworks after you've taken the test. Okay? All right. Go ahead and get started.